Welcome, everybody. This is our March 18th regular council meeting. I just have a quick announcement before we call the meeting to order. Before we begin, I would like to just take a moment to talk about this evening's public hearing. First, let me start by saying this is our first rezoning request that council has undertaken. That being the case, please be patient. We want to do our best to handle this correctly and make informed decisions. I'd also like to point out that no decision will be made this evening regarding this being approved or not. This evening is to get public feedback to make an informed decision at a later date. Council asks that all feedback be presented in a respectful and professional manner so that we can all work together to reach the best decision for the community. So on that note, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. CAO, do we have quorum?
We have quorum, Your Worship.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is declaration of conflicts of interest. So we have three tonight. Okay,
I need to declare conflict on
the rezoning for modern. Okay,
11A.
okay,
And Madam Mayor, I have a conflict with item 11C.
okay. And I myself have a conflict with item 11D. So we've already filed the paperwork for those. Do we have any other conflicts? Okay. So the next item up is adoption of the agenda. Everybody's had a chance to look at tonight's agenda. Do we have any amendments that need to be made? Okay, so it would now take a motion to adopt the agenda. Do we have a mover? Yes, Steve. Do we have a seconder? Are we ready for the question? Okay, we'll now proceed with the vote. All in favor of adopting this meeting's agenda in its current form, show your consent by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Carried. Okay, the next item is the adoption of the minutes from the February 21st regular meeting as presented. Any amendments or questions on those minutes? Okay, it would now take a mover to adopt the minutes from the February 21st meeting. Do I have a seconder? Are we ready for the question? We'll now proceed with the vote. All those in favor of adopting the February 21st regular meeting minutes, show your consent by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. So the next item is questions from the public. So these would be not pertaining to the rezone because we'll have time for that at a later time in the meeting. Do we have any?
We have no written.
No submission. Okay, do we have any questions from the public not pertaining to the rezoning items? Okay. Item is petition request for delegation. Any? Okay. Next up are council member reports. Deputy Mayor Martin, you're first.
The quick one. I think the ring is officially done for the year. I don't think we can bring that back. Had a great success. Really emphasize the need for community connection. That's been told me over and over again, all across both reports. On top of that, recently talking to another resident, had some positive feedback with the RCMP. Normally we hear negative, and this was excellent to hear, so I later this on talking to them about that. A big thank you. We also had the community breakfast here at the center as well, and it's the same thing. Really good turnout, a lot of kids, a lot of families, and the need for community connection was brought up multiple times again. So,
That's what I've seen.
I put up a video in regards to the public hearings for the community building effort. I guess I'm saying that right, the community involvement. And from that, I got a lot of messages and I had a lot of conversations with some residents. And one thing that came up a few times, which I was going to bring to council, was the possibility of looking at the configuration of council possibly. It was brought up that theoretically it could be possible that during the next election, we could have a mayor, deputy mayor, and we could have two at-large councillors, all from one ward. So we could have 4 councillors in one ward, and we could have 1 and 1. So maybe just at some point, we could talk about the configuration of maybe having 2, from each ward and having a no at-large, or just something that's a little bit different potentially. And nothing else to report.
Okay, next up, Councilor Congress.
Yeah, I just want to bring up the public consultations as well. The next one is on Wednesday at 7 to 8:30, and it's at the Dundas Baptist Church. So I just want to remind residents to make sure to show up. We need all the input we can get for the strategic planning that we're undertaking. And if you can't make it, there is also a link so that you can answer the questions online.
Okay, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of talking about the same stuff. Been lucky enough to go to a bunch of the strategic planning meetings. We did the one over in Maymake Hill at the church off Briggs Crossroad. Did the one at St. Philip, and we did the one at Lakeside. Like 20, 30 people every time. And the big thing we keep on telling everybody is just tell everybody about these kind of meetings, about the strategic planning meetings, anything to do with council. If you guys could just talk about it. Facebook posts and mail outs and everything else work, but word of mouth is kind of the best way to get the info and the the message out there to everybody. So just thank you to everyone that showed up to that. Obviously, big weekend here for the community center where they were putting on all the events for St. Patrick's Day. They did a great job. I heard a lot of good feedback on that, and yeah, put it.
Okay, Councilor Sport.
Just echoing the same thing as my fellow councilmen have said about the public hearings. So far, I've assisted to 2 of the sessions, and it's been very productive. Although the process is meant to build a plan for a 5-year plan, it's been very informative for myself. Gives us a great chance to hear what the residents think and need. Meetings could have been a little better structured, if you will, but still got very good points out of those meetings. A lot of things, similar things come out from different wards. So it tells me that some things are needed throughout the municipality, something are locally needed. It helped me set goals for areas to work on in my ward for the next 3 or 4 years. In closing, I'd like to thank all the residents that did come up and share their opinions and ideas. And big kudos to all the staff for bringing all those people together. And my ward did come out ahead and participation.
So far, yes, Ward 3 has had the best turnout, but Ward 2 hasn't had their meetings yet. Okay, my turn. The tourism committee is making progress. Today, we discussed a regional events calendar and a criteria for events to be shared, as well as the brand value proposition that will be used in surveys sent out to targeted groups and areas to draw interest in tourism to the area. So Maple Hills is well represented, or they're representing our assets within this committee, so that's good news for us. The public safety committee meeting was postponed due to a few items that we wish to discuss not being available yet. We're working on rescheduling and are hoping that Wednesday or Thursday this week we'll be able to have a discussion with the executive committee to finalize items required and, finalize items and required attendees for the next meeting. While we're anxious to get to work, it was nice to see that it was recognized that we needed more information for the meeting to be productive, and thus it was decided to postpone. With our own strategic planning meeting, as the other councils have noted, we've had great turnouts in wards 1 and 3. Ward 2 is this Wednesday at 7. My apologies in advance that due to a scheduling conflict, I'll be unable to attend. Again, thanks to the residents that have come out. Check the website and Facebook page for links to the survey if you're not able to attend the meetings. And finally, the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick is hosting a 2-day event called Advocacy Days this Wednesday and Thursday that CAO Legier and I will be attending. Wednesday will focus on interacting with elected officials in the province. We'll hear from leaders of the Green, Liberal, and Conservative parties. After which the union will discuss next steps and priorities for the municipalities. Thursday will focus on the success of fiscal reform in other provinces and a conversation with members of the union about what priorities should be, what our priorities should be when working on fiscal reform with the province of New Brunswick. I will provide an update at the April meeting on this item, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to ensure that Maple Hill has a voice in these conversations. Okay. So next up is bylaw motions and resolutions.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have 4 topics on the agenda. The first topic on the agenda is a rezoning application from Modern.
Is that the
Yeah.
first one?
Yeah, that's the first one. So, before moving on to the public hearing, I'm just gonna go through what the process is when council receives a rezoning application, so residents can better understand how this will play out tonight. So traditionally, somebody would request for a zoning change to the current property. They would visit Plan 360, file the appropriate paperwork, pay the appropriate fee. That would then be transmitted to council, where council could decide on if they want to move forward with the rezoning application or not move forward with the rezoning application. The recommendation by staff is always to move forward with the rezoning, which is sending it back to the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, where a proposed bylaw is drafted, where our notices are sent to residents, whereas objections can be sent directly to the office of the clerk with a specific date that a public hearing could be held. That motion was passed by council on January 17th. Normally, there's a delay in making sure you can show up on the PRAC, the Policy Planning Review and Adjustment Committee schedule. During the consultation with Plan 360, they requested an extension to appear in February meeting. That is also a public meeting that is held where any resident can come in, similar to this process, and share any concerns or objections you might have to the application. Then the people of the PRAC committee would make a recommendation to council and provide a written report. We received that written report last week. Phil from Plan 360 will make a presentation on the report and the recommendation from the PRAC committee. Following that presentation, council will have an opportunity to ask any questions on the application itself. Then we will proceed with the public portion of the evening. I will read any correspondence that was received during this process. I did have one submission that's 37 pages long, so I apologize that I have to read that submission. And we will then give people in attendance the opportunity to speak on behalf of the rezoning. Once that part is concluded, council will then deliberate and determine how they would like to proceed. As this would be considered a bylaw, 3 readings are necessary to move forward with any potential rezoning. We cannot do the entire 3 readings at a particular meeting, even though if council determined to do the first and second reading by title of the bylaw tonight, it would not obligate council of moving forward. It would just mean that they're moving forward in the process, and it would then require another meeting to determine if they want to finalize the process. I don't know if there's anything that I missed, Phil. It's been a while since I've Very
been
thorough.
one. So I felt it was a good opportunity to kind of educate people on the process. There's no questions. The floor is now.
Thank you, Eve. So tonight, as you mentioned, is the public hearing of modern construction, and just that is the application on behalf of them. And it's for rezoning from the conservation zone to the intensive resource development zone. And this is just an outline of tonight, the public hearing. So let's start off with some introduction, just we are, what is a rezoning? You touched a bit on that, so I won't repeat, but just to go quickly over what a rezoning type is. Then we'll go into the presentation itself, the details of the request, and as Steve mentioned, after there'll be a period for questions at the end. So myself, my name is Phil Robichaud. I'm the planner. I'm here with my colleague Kurt Brewer too, which is also a planner. And we both work for Plan 360, which is a branch of Southeast Regional Service Commission. So that means we don't work directly for Maple Hills. We're needed to provide them land use planning services. So essentially, we administer their building regulation, subdivision regulation, and zoning regulation. We do this at a regional level, Westmoreland and Albert County, but we don't do Moncton and Canada. So today is a question of the rural plan. So what is a rural plan? So rural plan, simply put, is the rules of development. So what is allowed where and how close you have to be from property lines, etc. Done through zoning. And there's also policies that helps to guide future decisions. So what is a rezoning? What we are talking about today. So a rezoning is essentially changing what is permitted on a property. An example from residential to commercial, which is not what we're here today, but which is an example. And council's role on rezoning requests is they either accept or deny the rezoning, and they also have the opportunity to add conditions. Staff, our role is just to ensure that the law is respected, the community planning act, and just ensure that the proper process is respected. We also mandate all the administrative work within the process, and we also provide advice and recommendation. And the role of neighboring citizens or a neighboring property owner tonight is to express their comments or concerns on the request. I won't spend a lot of time on this because Eve went over it. So this application started from an applicant from Genpact who were working on behalf of the property owner. Modern construction, so they submitted an application to Plan 360. We reviewed the proposal at preliminary level. We send the proposal to provincial department review, and once we gather all that information, we start the process that we've summarized already. The council took the resolution January 17th to proceed to the next step, which meant that on February 28th, we presented this request to the Plan Review Adjustment Committee, which they formulated a recommendation for council. And tonight is the public hearing and the potential of first reading. And after public hearing is completed and the recommendation is received, which we'll be presenting both tonight, we're doing both tonight, council will be legally allowed to start doing readings of the rezoning. So they'll be legally allowed to start voting on the rezoning. As Steve mentioned, the decision can be taken tonight. You have to do 3 readings on 2 separate meetings, so it's possible for the decision to be made.
Just a correction, Phil. We normally would recommend council to do first and second reading.
Okay,
If they didn't decide to proceed, and then at the second meeting, we do the third and reading together.
okay. Thanks for the clarification. So that goes over the introduction. So now we'll start talking about the request itself. So the proposal is to rezone 2 full property and a portion of another property from a conservation zone to the intensive resource development zone. And it's with the intent to expand an existing gravel pit and rock quarry. So rock quarry is essentially using explosive to blast consolidated rocks or eventually to be used as construction materials. So the property in question is located just north of Moncton, about 500 meters from the city limits. And we're on Gorge Road, so north is facing towards the left right now. So we see here, this right now is the existing quarry of the applicant. And they also own this property here, which I believe they're using as an asphalt plant. And this neighboring property, we have a Tri-Hill, which is also operating a quarry, and municipal enterprise, I think it's called, they're operating a similar activity here. And the property in question, the one subject to the rezoning, is the one highlighted in red right here. So this section of land that is wooded between the two quarries. So this is what we're questioning tonight. So just a bit of background. So modern construction has been operating for about 70 years with more intensive operation for the last 20. And they have a bit of history with rezoning. So in 2007, they went through rezoning to allow an expansion at that time, to allow a port expansion. And when they went through that rezoning, it's at that point that they reserved a conservation zone, the one being zoned today. And the reason why that conservation zone was reserved, it was for dust control and to preserve the Loose Mountain viewscape and just to offer a bit of buffer from surrounding uses. And when they did the rezoning in 2007, they estimated that they would have 40 years worth of aggregates with that rezoning, with that additional area they could extract. But with the recent construction boom, this has been reduced significantly, and they estimate they have less than 10 years left. And with this rezoning here, that would extend the lifespan of the quarry. So this is the zoning map of the property. So we see in brown, that's the property owned by the modern construction that's wishing to expand. So the brown is intensive resource development, and that is the zone required to exploit the quarry. Property in question is this one in red here, that conservation zone highlighted in red. And we see the neighboring property, we have other intensive resource development zoning. We have a lot of rural area in the surrounding area. This is the most common zoning, which allows mostly single unit dwellings, residential and agricultural use and stuff like that. So it's very versatile zone. And we have some agricultural land here too, about 1 kilometer away. And also we have the water protection, so a watershed protection zone about 700 meters away, but we're outside of that zoning with this property here. Again, the zoning, the rezoning is to essentially turn this area highlighted in red in brown. It's a resource development zone. And just so you know, the conservation zone doesn't allow a lot of things, mostly for conservation purposes. So this zoning doesn't allow a lot of use with the current zone. So we see their proposal. So we see the property highlighted in red here. They're looking to expand their existing quarry. So part of operating the quarry is to have this permit called the approval to operate permit. So this is essentially an oversight by the departments, provincial department with permit environment. And they look at things such as dust, noise, blasting schedules, sedimentation ponds, reclamation plans, and those types of things. So the Department of Environment role in quarry is much more involved. They have monitoring and so on, just to make sure that the quarry is operating in a responsible way. So they are subject to that approval, and they do have one for their existing operation for what they're doing today. They're intending to use the same access that they're using right now. So there's no new access proposed. And they also mentioned that there's no change of intensity expected with this expansion. It's just to have more access to aggregates. So the amount of blasting, traffic, just rock being exploited according to the supporting document should remain relatively the same. And just a bit of overview, so just some other information on the request. So they don't intend to stockpile aggregates on the site. They will bring it off site. The lands are fenced for security reason. The tree and topsoil of the property in question would be harvested and not wasted if ever the rezoning does get approved. And they already meet the Department of Environment, local government rock and quarry siting standard, and they already do have an approval to operate. So they already have all the necessary and appropriate environmental approval already for the existing quarry. The annual volume of truck traffic will not increase, and the rezoning is estimated to extend the lifespan by 25 to 30 years. So that's the reason for the request, just to allow future proofing and allow more aggregate to be extracted in the future. So now we talk about policies. So policies are essentially in the rural plan and they help to guide future decisions for these type of requests. And the policies for the Westmoreland Public Rural Plan, which is the plan adopted currently in Maple Hills, specifies that the rural area as a predominantly natural resources area. That's a primary economic driver and a key foundation for the rural economy. So it does recognize that it is important for the local region. It also supplies necessary resources and aggregates for neighboring communities. But it also recognizes that some natural resources are quite impactful, such as quarries, and it should be studied well to make sure that pest management are addressed. And in terms of authority, it specifically states that there's no vacant property that is zoned specifically for a quarry. Every new quarry will have to go through this process, through this rezoning process. So every new request will be treated case by case with council and with there's a recommendation that we have from the plan review and adjustment committee and also staff. Okay, there's no vacant land you can just go and purchase and go for a quarry. You have to go through this exercise for anything before. I just want to highlight proximity to residents. So on the west would be the closest where existing residents are located, about 300 meters. More towards the north, with about 895 meters, and to the south is Hammond Road, for about 850 meters. I'll also note that the currently is surrounded by quarries, so the expansion of this quarry does not further encroach, goes closer to a dwelling than in the existing quarry is already at. Just to show photos of the property, so just photo here facing north, so we see the access to the quarry here. We're kind of on top of the mountain on the hill here, and to the west is their asphalt plant. So the two actors in front of each other. They're facing the other direction, so we see the asphalt plant here and the entrance that we're looking at earlier. So as part of the request, we go through this extensive consultation process. We consult with a lot of provincial departments, and they provide us comments, and then we use those comments and to inform the council and to make that recommendation. So this consultation process started in November, and I'm just going to go quickly through each of their comments. Some of them give them a certain period of time to respond, and some of them never did respond to our comments. So there's some that are not shown here tonight. The first one is natural resources, which they essentially mentioned that it's likely that there is wildlife in the corridor in the property in question. And they also highlighted that this is an area with potential development of oil and natural gas, and that the property owner should be aware of that, but they don't expect any activity at the time. We consulted with agriculture, Department of Agriculture, and they did not respond to any comments, but as I noted, the rezoning is almost a kilometer away from the closest agriculturally zoned land. Transportation, they did not respond to comments either, but their mapping suggests that the road is classified as good, which is the best classification according to their mapping, and you're not intending to increase the volume and the traffic. So it will be keep the option that's currently operating will maintain and be the same. Then Department of Environment, we consulted with several different departments within the Department of Environment and Local Government. The first is the Environmental Impact Assessment Branch. So that is a specific study you have to do for a certain project. And in this case, because of the nature of the project, environmental impact assessment is not required. We consulted with the surface water management. Their role is to evaluate impacts on water courses, wetland, and issue permits if necessary. So they did mention that the accumulation of water that you may have seen in the existing pit is now technically defined as a water course. And any activity within this accumulation of water will require a raw permit or a permit to operate within 30 meters. And the next one is the Environmental Science Fiction Division. So they were consulted because of potential impacts on well. So they did highlight that they had concerns about impacts on well, and they did receive complaints from neighboring property owners about water turning brownish, with no exact details. And they did recommend to start again water monitoring of wells within 5 or 2 meters of the blast. That was their recommendation, to start monitoring of wells. And the final department we consulted with, which is the most important in this situation, is the authorization branch. Again, they're the one that administer their rock quarry standards. So that is the setbacks and stuff from the quarry. So they have certain distances that have to keep from the streets, from neighboring property lines, from wells, etc. So they're the one that oversee the rock quarry siting standards. And they're also the one that issues their approval to operate. So the approval to operate is a monitoring and reporting program that is quite extensive and verifies things such as air quality, water quality, sound, etc. They may have a schedule when you can blast and a certain condition of when you can blast. So it is quite an oversight to address the biggest concerns that we see with quarries. And their comments were that the current approval to operate that they have currently is not sufficient. If they wish to expand, they'll have to reissue the approval to operate, and all the things that I've mentioned will need to be reevaluated. And within the context of the approval to operate, they could look at the comments from the other department related to impacts on wells and the water turning around. But that will all be done through the context of the approval to operate with the authorization. I asked them a bit more what it means, the approval to operate, so what they look at. So this is kind of a grocery list that they show me here. So they'll look at things such as the blast monitoring plan, groundwater monitoring plan, air quality, the reclamation plan. So what state does the quarry needs to be left at after it is decommissioned. So there's quite a lot of plans and things that they will be looking at through this context of through this approval to operate. So that concludes a bit my presentation. I'll just go a bit into the discussion. So quarrying, even if it has significant impact, is a necessary industry. It provides essential resources to neighboring communities, and it is one important key economic driver for rural areas. And where the resources are, it's not somewhere you can just go anywhere. So it's somewhere, if you want to operate a quarry, you have to make sure that the resource is available. So it's very location dependent. But as I mentioned, it is quite an intensive activity, and there should be careful consideration given to the environment and neighboring residential area properties. But as I mentioned, it is an existing quarry seeking to expand, so a lot of the impacts caused by the quarry are already present. The main approval that they require, they already have one, and that will need to be reevaluated and reissued as part of their approval to operate. And many of the concerns that we see that are related to quarries are addressed through this approval to operate. The main role of zoning is to determine whether the location is appropriate. So is it causing land use conflict? Are we too close to watershed? Are we going to disturb agriculture areas? So those are the type of things that we look at with zoning, and the Plan Review and Adjustment Committee were of the opinion that this location was appropriate due to the fact that we're completely surrounded by similar activity, and that the impact caused by this type of activity will not be significantly more severe than what it already is. And ultimately, the fact that you need to expand shows that there's a need to fill a gap for aggregate in the region, so there is a demand for aggregate in the region. And it's best to operate close to existing quarry. The volume is expected to be the same. And the question tonight is to rezone for the conservation zone, and the original intent of the conservation zone in 2007, according to the background report, was to control dust, create a buffer for their tree and take a viewscape. We're of the opinion that the first three dust buffer and trees are properly addressed through the approval to operate. The last one was protecting the viewscape. So what that means, protecting the viewscape, is this quarry is on the mountain, and if you're looking from far away, are you gonna disturb the natural beauty and see a big hole in the mountain? So that's what they meant by protecting the viewscape. And part of the background report of Gentech, we have provided documents to show how this will be impacted. So from the immediate neighboring area, so when you see a line here, it means that they're taking a cross section. So you're standing at one end and they're looking toward the quarry, and is your impact, or is the viewscape going to be impacted? And included from the bottom of the mountain on Hammond Road, just because the mountain is so steep, that there will be no visual impact lost with the loss of this buffer. But if you back up a bit, we ask the question, okay, that makes sense for the bottom of the mountain, but if you go a bit further back, will the visual impact be, or will the viewscape be impacted? So there's three spots that were judged as places where they would be the most impacted. One would be on Finley Boulevard in Riverview, which is kind of a hill. If you're on that hill and looking about 13 kilometers away at the quarry, the answer is yes, there will be a visual impact by this quarry from the mountain hospital. So if you're on the roof or one of the top floors, and you're looking towards the quarry, again, yes, there could be a visual impact. The third point that we're identifying possibly problematic is from Highway 15, close to Costco. Again, they're a bit higher up, so if you're looking from there, it's possible that the viewscape would be impacted with the conservation buffer blocks. That concludes my presentation, so I'll just present the recommendation from the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. So this committee has recommending council to proceed with the rezoning from conservation to intensive resource development. This is just a motion that is the council. I'll read it word by word. And they did follow up with reasons why this rezoning should be accepted. First, the proposal aligns with the rural plan policies. It entails the expansion of the existing rock quarry with a proposed volume similar to the current operation, maintaining a consistent level of impact on neighboring area. And the third reason is the proposal is situated among similar activities. And they did suggest one condition with the rezoning, that prior to any operation that they go and get their approval to operate, as we already discussed the presentation tonight. And that concludes my overview of the presentation.
Thank you, Phil. So now would be the time for council to ask questions to Plan 360 and the application. That component is done. We'll then proceed with written submissions and then public questions from team members.
We'll start with Councilor Erskine, if you have to start up first.
There was one slide where you talked about the proponent of this should be aware of natural gas. What, you mind going into that again? What that meant?
To be honest, I don't have a lot more details of they have potential future plan for oil or natural gas lines here, but they don't estimate that there'll be any activities in the near future, and just to put the proponent aware of that. So it's just kind of a generic comment. I believe they have maps of potential area with oils and stuff for natural gas people, and they kind of that generate comments. So other than the specific comments I have there, I don't have much more detail.
Okay, and then my second question was, on one of the last slides, there were 4 issues that were addressed from the 2007 application, one of which being the viewscape.
Mhm.
You mind going back to that slide?
So this one here, or the,
No, it was before,
Before.
where like listed
okay,
this.
so that was the.
So
Yeah.
you said during the presentation that the first 3 you felt were still gonna be somewhat under control, and that the last one was the one that was mostly
That's,
questionable, so to speak, and then you showed us the angles that
yeah,
that could be disrupted. So in terms of dust control, the buffer and the trees, if they're gonna, cut, like you sort of went quickly by those. Do you mind kind of going back into that again? How those were gonna be addressed?
sure. So, what I said, those 3 would be addressed through the approval to operate. So that is that extensive approval with the Department of Environment, and for the control of dust, as an example, when they're running crushers, I believe they have to like spray water in the crusher so that keeps the dust down, and they have certain mechanisms to ensure that dust is controlled on the property itself. So that's how I think that the control of dust could be managed, creating a buffer. The rock quarry siting standard, that is a specific document that says how close you need to be from property lines or from the street, et cetera. So for example, you need to be 100 feet from a property line, so from the neighboring property, they would need to maintain a buffer of 100 feet. And from the road, you need to maintain a buffer, I think it's 100 meters, so 330 feet. And there are other buffers also within the rock quarry siting standards. And the third one is preserving the trees. I guess I sort of misspoke there. So that one would not be addressed through the approval to operate, because ultimately the conservation zone would be eliminated, and the trees would be eliminated. So that one specifically is not, there is going to be a loss of trees, yes.
And so fundamentally, in their core operations, you mentioned that they would not be increasing like the hollow. So it would be somewhat business as usual, but you'd be adding useful life to the available resources. So nearby residents, theoretically, if this happened, it would be business as usual with the risk of groundwater, with some disruption of viewscape from afar. And the issue would likely, not the issue, but the operation would continue for potentially 10 to 15, or sorry, 25 years longer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
Councilor Jean Grant has turned up.
Yeah, can you go back to the second last slide? Okay. So the 30-meter buffer that's required,
Mhm.
how much of this, like, because if they're required to have a 30-meter buffer, they're going to lose some of the access, right?
Yes, they could, I'm not sure what the approval to operate, but with a law permits, an approval to operate closer to a water source, so they would have the option to apply for this permit to operate closer to a water source. So usually these buffers are more so to protect environmentally sensitive area. This is an accumulation of water that was man-made, caused by the quarry itself. So I'm sure they would consider that while looking at buffers from the water course.
Okay. So our conservation stuff often used as a backup for resource exploitation.
This is the only that we're aware of. For example, modern construction is the only private company, let's say private property owner that owns conservation zones in Maple Hills. Usually conservation zones are meant for conservation purposes, so they'll be owned by Dust Unlimited or Nature Conservancy Canada, stuff like that. So this is kind of a unique example where they use the conservation zone as a method of creating buffer. If you see.
Okay. So So this was made in conservation zone when they approved the initial.
That's correct, yes.
So this is nothing new that it's a conservation.
It's been that way since 2007, yes.
So if we make any conditions to the bylaw, who polices that?
Any conditions to bylaw would be us to police it and maintain it. So if there's any conditions you're considering, we can certainly discuss it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
If you were, David was talking about the conservation, so. One of the slides you brought up about this before, as far as the corridor. Said one of your slides that,
The wildlife corridor.
what is there to help mitigate that if this land's lost?
There's nothing, to be honest. It's a loss of natural habitat and loss of trees.
The agreement in 2007.
That's 2007 rezoning.
Yeah, it was plots here were sensitive. Conservation.
Your original report I sent you, that was part of it, but I could certainly send it to you again, yeah.
On that, talking about all the consultations that you take, talking with the residents and all that, obviously we have other business owners here as well. And it's occurred, consultation about other businesses.
Well, tonight is the consultation, so other than the provincial departments, the consultation and is happening tonight on addition with the letter that we received Wednesday or.
So I just have a question, with regard to comments about, excuse me, the brownish water.
Mhm.
Is that something that's already being followed up on regardless of our decision? Or is that only gonna be followed up on the approved itself?
Yeah, and the applicant from Genpact will probably speak more to that than me, but the way he explained to me is in 2007, when they expanded their quarry, they, as part of their approval, they had to do 3, I believe, monitoring wells all around the property. And they were verifying impacts on well with these monitoring wells. Each time they were blast, they would check at certain intervals, see how the wells are impacted. And I believe if you know that no impact within 6 months or X amount of time, you can push the rate that you do with these tests to the point where after 10 years, they noted no adverse impact, and they stopped this monitoring program. But Genpact did recommend to re-implement this monitoring program that would be done through the context of the approval to operate. So I think they're open to reintroducing this well monitoring program.
So the initial documents that you sent us indicated that this expansion could have potential impacts on well water.
It could be.
So can you just explain that a little more? I mean, if the operation's already happening, what's the difference? Is it because there's more blasts? Just so we understand.
I don't want to speak too much to that. To be honest, I'm not a professional, so I'm professional on that matter. I spoke with appropriate departments, and that's the answer they gave us, that they would do well monitoring programs in the context of their approval. So the specific impacts on the well, I don't know enough to talk about it. But we do have, we get a representative from Genpact, maybe they could speak to that. Okay.
Okay. Anything else, guys?
Excuse me, I realize we have no pain, but if you could raise your volume a little bit. I know you got a few older people, but even moving up front, I still don't hear a lot that's said at all. Especially this gentleman's back turned to us. His voice is going this way. I'm sorry, but I'm not hearing a lot of what you're saying.
Okay, we'll speak louder. I try regularly not to be so loud, so. All right.
My wife would disagree that I speak on it. So this is the portion where we'll read the written submissions that were provided prior to the meeting. We only received one correspondence. After I finish reading this correspondence, normally we give residents, people present in the hall to provide local submissions or ask local, provide local comments. I understand that the developer is here, or the applicant is here with Gemtech. Normally, it's always best to wait till the end because there might be a lot of questions and we're not doing a lot of back and forth. So if you could jot down some of the questions that people might have, it might be easier to answer them. Any questions? So we received, and I apologize, I will be drinking from this. On March 3rd, we received a letter last week that was dated March 13, 2024 from Brad Boyd, barristers and solicitors. It was addressed to Maple Hills Rural Community Council, and it reads, "Dear members of Maple Hills Rural Community Council, the subject objection to the proposed rezoning of PIDs 7039957, 011058832, and 009448983. We are writing on behalf of Trigon Paving and Construction, herein referred to as Trigon, a local aggregate extraction business situated to the south of Modern Construction Limited, herein referred to as Modern Quarry. We are concerned that the properties owned by Trigon, being PID 702556333, 70555 and 702424666 will be negatively impacted by the rezoning proposal before council. It has come to our attention that Modern intends to expand their operations by seeking to rezone a parcel of land being PID 7039957 011058832 and 009448983, currently designed as a conservation zone to an intensive resource development zone. This land serves as a natural buffer between the operations of Trigon and Modern. It provides protection from flying debris and allows both operators to run concurrently. Without overstating it, rezoning the properties in question has the potential to ruin Trigon's business. For these reasons and the reasons listed below, we are stridently against the rezoning, the requested rezoning. Background information. Trigon commenced its operation in 1992, focusing on blasting and quarrying within their property in New Brunswick. Over the years, it has significantly contributed to the local economy, infrastructure development, and employment, maintaining a consistent operation to extract approximately 500,000 tons of aggregate yearly. For your information, the land in question was not always zoned conservation. In 2007, an agreement was reached between Modern and the province of New Brunswick concerning the zoning of several properties. This agreement was part of Modern's plan to expand its operation. As part of the agreement, Modern was granted the designation Intensive Resource Development Zone for PID 009448868 and surrounding properties in return for having the PIDs 7039957 011058832 and 009448983 zone conservation. It is those latter three PIDs that Modern is now trying to revert to intensive resource development, effectively clawing back to the consideration they gave to get the original deal. The zoning of the properties in question as conservation was a significant aspect of the agreement intended to protect natural landscape and ecosystem while allowing for controlled development in designated areas. This zoning decision was also instrumental in preserving the natural buffer between Trigon and Modern, allowing both companies to perform blasting activities concurrently. Without this barrier, for safety reasons, that current operations would be possible. The proposal by Modern to rezone PID 7039957 along with PID 011058832 and 009448983 from conservation zone to intensive resource development raises significant concerns for Trigon. This proposed rezoning threatens to undermine the balance achieved through the 2007 agreement, potentially causing irreversible environmental damage and operational disruptions for Trigon. Primary concerns revolve around the risk of creating fissures that could redirect water into Trigon's quarry, jeopardizing its operation and local ecosystem. Currently, the Maple Hills rural community has approximately 332.5 acres of land zone conservation. That includes the approximate 57 acres of land that Modern is proposing to rezone to intensive resource development.
The rezoning of that parcel of land would reduce the amount of land conservation, zone conservation in Maple Hills rural community by 17%. That is a step in the wrong direction. Primary concern revolves around the potential for irreversible and terminal damage of Tri-Gale operations stemming from the proposed expansion. The presence of a large body of water in modern construction property being 703-99571 raises significant alarm. In the general course of business, blasting operations have the potential to create fissures in the underlying rock formation. If blasting is done in the current buffer zone, i.e. the PIDs proposed for rezoning, there is a significant risk of creating fissures between the large body of water and Tri-Gale's quarry. That would release approximately 1.8 billion liters of water into the quarry. Please refer to Exhibit A showing the large body of water and its proximity to Tri-Gale's operation. Additionally, Tri-Gale's operation sits at a lower elevation than Modern's, and water flows downhill. Refer to Exhibit B showing sight lines of the area in question, as well as cross sections of sightline D, showing the higher elevation of the large body of water to Tri-Gale's operation. An estimated amount of water that could potentially infiltrate Tri-Gale's core because of fissures created by blasting in the buffer zone is as follows. Approximate dimensions of the lake, 900 meters by 100 meters by 20 meters equals 1.8 million cubic meters. The amount of water at 1.8 million cubic liters, 1.8 times 1,000 liters equals 1.8 billion liters of water. To give context to the quantity of water, that is 720 Olympic swimming pools worth of water. It would be prohibitively expensive to pump all that water out of the quarry, thereby effectively ending Tri-Gale's operation. Such an event would terminate the livelihoods of 30 employees and end Tri-Gale's ability to extract approximately 500,000 tons of aggregate yearly. Furthermore, this fissure would alter the natural drainage patterns in the area, exacerbating the risk of future flooding and water contamination. Other concerns. We would also like to highlight several additional concerns. One, insufficient notice for public meeting. The notice of the public meeting regarding to the rezoning was dated February 23rd, 2024. It only came by post March 2nd, 2024, giving the large potential impact on Tri-Gale. That notice period is inadequate to prepare a full answer to the proposed rezoning. Giving such an inadequate notice period violates the principle of procedural fairness. The cornerstone of procedural fairness is the obligation to provide affected parties with a reasonable opportunity to prepare and present their case. The notice period of 2 weeks and 3 days provided to Tri-Gale falls significantly short of this requirement, particularly given the complexity and the potential impact of rezoning proposed on Tri-Gale's operation and the local environment. This sufficient notice period undermines the fairness of the process and does not allow Tri-Gale adequate time to consult with experts, gather necessary data, and formulate a comprehensive response. The right to be heard is an essential aspect of procedural fairness, ensuring that affected parties can influence the decision-making process through meaningful participation. The abbreviated notice period directly impairs Tri-Gale's ability to exercise this right effectively. Without sufficient time to prepare, Tri-Gale is placed at a disadvantage, potentially leading to a decision made without full consideration of the relevant facts. The duty to consult embodies the expectation that decision makers will actively engage when consider the input of those impacted by their decision. Meaningful consultation is predicated on providing sufficient notice, allowing for thoughtful preparation and participation. Failure to provide adequate notice not only violates the duty, but also signals a departure from principles of procedural fairness, which dictates that the process should be transparent and equitable. Inaccuracies and omissions in Gentech's report. We have identified significant inaccuracies and omissions in the report prepared by Gentech, commissioned by Modern to support their rezoning application. Notably, the report erroneously asserts that Modern is in full compliance with all setback requirements. Claim reiterates a claim reiterated 3 times across the document on page 3, page 4, and within the executive summary. Please see Exhibit C attached. This assertion is demonstrably false with respect to the drinking water well owned by Trigon. The setback distance for this critical infrastructure does not meet the mandated regulations, directly contradicting Gemtech's claim. Such a glaring oversight raises serious questions about the reliability and comprehensiveness of the report's findings. Furthermore, Gemtech's report completely overlooks the presence of ammonium nitrate storage at Trigill's facility, a matter of grave concern given the stringent federal regulations governing the storage of such substance. The failure to acknowledge and assess the implication of Modern's proposed activities on the safe storage of ammonium nitrate is a significant omission that cannot be overlooked. It reflects a lack of due diligence and disregard for the potential safety risk posed by this rezoning proposal. Regrettably, the insufficient notice period provided by the public meeting has severely limited our ability to thoroughly examine and vet Gemtech's report. The lack of adequate time has prevented us from engaging experts to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the report, thereby impeding our ability to fully articulate the extent of its inaccuracies and omissions. This further exemplifies the procedural fairness issued at hand, underscoring the need for a more transparent and inclusive process that allows all stakeholders ample time to review and respond to such critical documentation. Federal, and point number 3, federally regulated ANFO storage. That means, I think it's ANFO, ANFO.
Said later on.
That's right. Ammonium nitrate fuel oil combination, I apologize. A critical aspect for our operation that necessitates further consideration in light of the proposed rezoning and subsequent blasting activities is Trigale storage of ammonium nitrate and ANFO, ammonium nitrate fuel oil combination. In compliance with regulations set forth by Natural Resource Canada, Trigale stores ANFO in the specialized truck where ammonium nitrate is mixed with diesel fuel to use in blasting operations. Post-operation, and in accordance with regulation, a minimum yield of 50 kilograms of ANFO is assumed to remain in the ANFO truck. This residual amount must be stored at a minimum distance of 270 meters from any inhabited building or structures, a stipulation that significantly influenced the placement of the ANFO truck. Currently, the only feasible location for the ANFO truck that meets the stringent safety requirement is at the northeast corner of Trigale's property. Importantly, the regulation also mandates that no surface blasting activity occur within 270 meters of the ANFO truck. This effectively precludes any blasting activities within the buffer zone adjacent to Trigale's operations, directly conflicting with Modern's proposed expansion plans. This consideration was also not considered in Gemtech's report. Given these regulations, Modern's intended blasting activities in the buffer zone would be infeasible without compromising the safety and regulation compliance of Trigale's operation. Please see Exhibit D for the relevant explosive storage regulations, the minimum distance mandated by Natural Resource Canada, and the position of the ANFO truck on Trigale's property, and the 270 meter radius for the ANFO truck storage location. This oversight not only highlights a significant safety concern, but also underscores the need for a thorough reassessment of the proposed rezoning and blasting activities by Modern. Ensuring compliance with federal safety regulation and the protection of all parties' operational integrity must be paramount in the council's consideration of the rezoning application. 4, threat to water wells and non-compliance with setback standards. Proposed expansion by Modern presents a significant and imminent threat to the integrity of drinking water wells vital to Trigale's operation and the health and safety of its employees. Trigale maintains 3 water wells, crucially for its daily operations, all of which are located approximately 30 meters from the boundaries between Trigale and Modern properties
placing them wells within the danger zone of the proposed blasting sites. Please refer to Exhibit E for the position of the wells and their proximity to the boundary. Given the proximity of these wells to the blasting activities proposed by Modern, it is inevitable that their structural integrity will be compromised, leading to their destruction. This threat is further exacerbated by Modern's apparent non-compliance with regulatory standards set forth by the Department of Environment and local government regarding a rock quarry sitting. Specifically, the rock quarry sitting standard mandates that the final operational perimeter of the proposed rock truck must not be located within 600 meters of any drinking water supply well, unless written permission from the well owners within this distance is obtained and submitted to the departments for acceptance. Please refer to Exhibit F for the quarry sitting standards. This regulation is designed to protect vital drinking resources from the potentially destructive impact of quarry operations. Despite these clear regulations, Modern has not approached Tri-Guild to obtain consent for the proximity of their proposed blasting activities to Tri-Guild's water well, which are unequivocally within the 600-meter range specified by the setback requirements. Please refer to Exhibit J, which shows the 600-meter radius for the wells. This oversight not only demonstrates a disregard for regulatory compliance, but also underscores a lack of consideration for environmental and operational repercussions on neighboring properties. Moreover, Gemtech's intimation, apologize, that's not a word I use regularly, that Modern has resolved all setback requirements is misleading and contributes to a false sense of security regarding the proposed expansion, environmental and operational impacts. Tri-Guild's wells, being well within 600 meters setback requirements, are at direct risk from the proposed quarry expansion. Tri-Guild is explicitly unwilling to grant consent for any activity that would jeopardize the safety and integrity of its water supply. Risk of property damage. Proposed blasting activities by Modern poses an enhanced and unacceptable risk to Tri-Guild's operation, particularly given the close proximity of the key structures to the boundary. Specifically, there are 4 critical structures within approximately 30 meters thereof, 2 scale houses, a crushing operation, and an asphalt plant. Proximity of these structures to the proposed blasting site significantly increases the risk of flying debris and dust, endangering the health and safety of Tri-Guild's employees and risking substantial damage to essential property and equipment. The 2 scale houses vital to accuracy weighing the aggregate produced in the quarry are directly at risk of damages from flying debris, which could compromise their structural integrity and operational functionality. Similarly, the crushing operation, a cornerstone of the aggregate processing, faces a heightened risk of damage from shock waves and debris, potentially leading to operational disruption and financial loss. Moreover, the asphalt plant is also endangered by the proposed blasting activities, with the potential for dust and debris to contaminate materials and damage machinery. These refer to Exhibit H, showing the distance between the aforementioned substructures and the boundary. This significant risk is not merely hypothetical, but a real threat that jeopardizes the continuity of Tri-Guild's operation and the safety of its workers. Proximity of these structures to the proposed blasting site calls for a stringent reassessment of Modern's expansion plans. Point 6, operational disruptions and loss of income. The conservation zone properties currently serve as a natural barrier between Tri-Guild and Modern's operation, enabling both companies to conduct their blasting activities without interfering with each other's operation. The removal of this natural buffer due to rezoning and subsequent blasting activities by Modern would necessitate a suspension of Tri-Guild's operation during Modern's blasting time for safety reasons. Financial implication of the disruption cannot be overstated. Tri-Guild's operation run a cost of approximately $5,000 per hour. With Modern's proposed blasting frequency of 2 to 3 times per week, the resultant downtime for Tri-Guild will lead to significant financial losses.
The lost operational time directly translates into lost income, not to mention the potential for increased operational costs associated with starting and restarting operations. This financial strain will have a profound impact on Tri-Gill's business sustainability, affected every time from its ability to retain employees to its capacity to fulfill contractual obligations. Furthermore, forced suspension of operation compromises Tri-Gill efficiency and productivity. Cumulative effect of these stoppages over time would not only erode its profitability, but also hinder its ability to compete effectively in the market. Given the thin margins on which aggregate extraction businesses operate, the financial ramification of these forced operational suspensions will be devastating. Procedural concern and additional. Oh, precedent concern, yes, thank you. Which is point number 7. An additional forward-looking concern we must raise pertains to the precedent that approving this rezoning request would establish. The initial agreement to keep these parcels known as conservation was made with a long-term vision for sustainable development and environmental protection in mind. Altering this designation now in response to Modern's proposal not only undermines the integrity of past agreements, but also sets a concerning precedent for future zoning and land use decisions. Should the council agree to rezone land that was previously committed to remain undeveloped, it signals to other landowners and businesses that zoning commitments are negotiable and subject to change. This could incentivize similar requests for rezoning from other parties interested in extending their resource extraction operation, potentially leading to an increased pressure on conservation areas and a gradually erosion of natural lands. Moreover, it may affect Tri-Gill's and other stakeholders' future planning and investment strategies. Knowing that areas designated for conservation could later be rezoned for industrial use. Proposed solution: 1, reject rezoning. While Tri-Gill is not opposed to industrial development, given these considerations and uncertainties, we strongly oppose the rezoning proposal. Potential for a fissure opening in the rock, destroying Tri-Gill's business, the potential for injury and property damage to its operation, the financial impact of shutting down each time Modern wishes to blast, the destruction of its drinking water wells, and the inaccurate information that Modern has supplied in stating that they have produced for all setbacks altogether provide adequate reason to reject the rezoning proposal. Reschedule the rezoning meeting. Council is unwilling to reject rezoning outright, and based on principles of procedure and fairness, we urge Maple Hills Rural Community Council give an adequate period to which to hire professionals to do a thorough risk analysis. Particularly, Tri-Gill would like to hire a hydrogeologist to examine the risk of flooding in Tri-Gill's quarry. We propose a 12-month extension to current deadline. That period should give Tri-Gill enough time to examine the potential fatal risk to its business and to the proposed mitigation strategies. It will also ensure that council has all the information and is fully informed when making their decision. We have no reason to believe that Modern will be prejudiced by this request in any way whatsoever. Assumption of liability. In the event that Maple Hills Rural Community Council decides to proceed with the rezoning despite the significant risks outlined, Tri-Gill insists a formal agreement wherein Modern and the council assume full liability for any and all consequences directly resulting from the rezoning and subsequent activities. This includes, but not limited to, destruction of property. Modern and the council must be held responsible for any damage to Tri-Gill's property and infrastructure, including the destruction of water wells, damage to scale houses, the crushing operation, and the asphalt plant due to blasting activities, injury to employees. Given the increased risk of injury from flying debris and operational disruption, Modern and the council should assume liability for any injuries sustained to Tri-Gale's employees as a direct result of the rezoning and the increased blasting activities. Business interruption and flooding. Any operational disruptions, including forced shutdowns during Modern's blasting activities and potential flooding resulting from the fissures in the rock, should be compensated by Modern and the council. This includes covering the operational cost of approximately $5,000 per hour during downtime and any losses incurred from flooding and other direct impact on Tri-Gale's business operation. Legal and remediation costs. Additionally, Modern and council should cover all legal fees, remediation efforts, and any other expense incurred by Tri-Gale in mitigating the effects of the rezoning, including the costs associated with hiring professionals like hydrogeologists for due diligence and developing mitigation strategies. To ensure these liabilities are adequately addressed, Tri-Gale proposes the creation of a legally binding agreement drafted and reviewed by legal representatives from all parties. This agreement should explicitly outline the responsibilities and liabilities of Modern and council, providing Tri-Gale with the necessary insurances and recourses in the event of adverse outcome resulting from the rezoning decision. Conclusion. To summarize, Tri-Gale stands firmly against the requested rezoning of PID 703995571, 011058832, and 009444983 due to the substantial risk and negative impacts outlined. Our concerns are fourfold. One, the potential for significant property damage destroying Tri-Gale's businesses. Two, the destruction of its drinking water wells. Three, the dire financial implications of operational disruptions. And four, overarching threats to the safety of its employees. Those reasons are sufficient to reject the rezoning proposed outright. If it is not rejected, then in light of the procedural fairness issue, including insufficient notice for meaningful engagement and Modern's apparent non-compliance with regulatory setback requirements, we ask for a 12-month period in which to properly assess the risk in Tri-Gale's operation. Tri-Gale is committed to constructive dialogue and solution that safeguard all stakeholders' interests, that recognize the need for responsible and sustainable development practices, and that aligns with both the community's well-being and environmental stewardship. Signed sincerely, Robert J. Boyd, solicitor for Tri-Gale Paving and Construction Limited. It was CC'd to council as a whole, myself and Chanel Doucette, the community development officer, and 4 people from the Department of Environment and Local Government, notably Glenn Savoy, the minister, Charbel Awad, the deputy minister of Environment and Local Government, Gary Crossman, Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and Heidi Liston, Deputy Minister of Environment and Climate Change. It includes an overview of exhibits as outlined in the letter. Exhibit A, overview of a large body of water in proximity to Tri-Gale's operation. Exhibit B, sightline and cross section showing the higher elevation of the large body of water for Tri-Gale's operation. Exhibit C, false claims in Gemtech's report concerning setbacks. Exhibit D, federal regulations for setbacks and maps showing radius of required setbacks. Exhibit E, position of water wells and distances to the buffer zone. Exhibit F, quarry sitting standards. Exhibit G, 600-meter radius from drinking water wells. And Exhibit H, distance between Tri-Gale buildings and boundaries. I will not read the exhibits. The exhibits are included in the council's package. This is a public document. Should anybody wish to receive a copy, simply have to review it to see if there's any information included or that would go against the right to information, any public information that would be released. But having read through it, I believe this would all be public information which could be shared. That is all we have to
Sure.
Okay, so now.
Yep.
Okay, so does anybody attending wish to speak on this rezoning request?
One general question. What was the guidelines for sending out the notice and where did the notice go?
Okay,
Yeah.
because you know that.
Yeah, so, the means to providing notice, they need to be provided 21 days prior to the date of the public hearing, which was met. It needs to be published on the municipality's website, which was done as well. And it needs to be sent to a minimum of 100 meters of the surrounding proposed rezoning. At council's request, that was expanded, and a total, I believe it's 55 residents were met towards that expanded search area, and that was what was sent to, excuse me, to residents from other homes.
So how did they receive it, so?
And they were sent via mail.
Oh, email.
No, mail.
Mail.
Canada Post mail.
And what's mail?
Not email, they were sent via Canada Post mail.
Look at 1,000 meters, I believe, what we,
No, it was less than,
900?
it was under, it was more than 100. I believe it was just 250 or 500 that we get a response.
I'm 2.5 kilometers away and I got noticed. There's a lot of people that were where I am on the end of the road towards the doors and no nothing about it.
Notices were sent on the list that was provided by GIS formatting from Plan 360. Can I ask a question, Bill? Do you guys set notices for PROC meetings as well for those residents?
We do not know, and I maybe have an explanation why they received a letter, so. Just one of the PID subject to rezoning was part of a larger PID that was kind of extending further out, so the buffer is actually from that larger section, so it's not just that. It's smaller section where the rezoning, that's probably why the gentleman there received the notice.
But if you got one here, you live there, and another guy lives closer, he don't get it. What's the explanation?
Yeah, Phil, that's what they're saying, is that the gentleman in the back of it, he had neighbors that were closer to the quarry that didn't receive it. But him,
I can probably answer my own question, but because I have a piece of property that boundaries on Moderns. Or
So you might have received it for that property,
no,
not,
that's what I'm wondering, yeah. But it just seems unfair that people that are a lot, closer on Amber Road don't get anything.
again, the access up to 100 meters. It was council's wish to expand that buffer zone to capture a larger catchment area. There was even discussions of sending it to all the residents of Maple Hills, which was not recommended by staff. As common practices, we will be getting more rezonings. There's also another application for another rezoning after this, so we would want to set precedent. There is a cost to sending those notices. Yes, there is a cost to apply, but the cost to send those notices to every resident would be far greater than the fee that we recoup for that rezoning application.
other questions?
Yeah, just out of curiosity here, so what's the obligation on the part of your organization there to consult with surrounding areas to make sure that they capture all the drinking water wells? There's a couple that weren't quite captured.
Or obligation to consult,
Obligation, or just figure out where the drinking water wells are.
our obligation is to, well, we make recommendations on land use. File questions, and part of our process, we consult with the appropriate provincial departments, which I've shown, and we've got to improve the content of the zone. So our responsibility in that regard would have been to do that, and consult with the appropriate departments.
So how would you figure out where water wells are? It's not,
I don't specifically figure out where water wells are. I ask the experts and
that would be the department.
the Department of Environment, yes.
Sorry, guys, just a comment was made. If you're gonna speak, can you just tell us your name, just sitting up there? Pardon?
David Sykes.
Okay. So when you, just to follow up on his question, when you say experts, you refer to the experts, who are the experts?
The Department of Environment, the regulatory body for all questions related to wells.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions?
So how do they miss those wells? Okay. I can't comment to that.
Nobody went in check the well, they just assumed. There was no wells,
Sorry.
everybody did. Tech just assumed that there was no wells there.
Could you be more specific on the wells?
Triangle has 3 wells within 16 or 30 meters. 30 meters of the property line. Why wasn't, why are they mentioned in your report?
So that's a question that, he did not produce that report. It was produced by the proponent that made the application. Gemtech is here and I believe they are ready to answer that question. At the end of the day, when it comes to drinking water wells, the Department of Environment and local government will be responsible to monitor, those types of, activities. So, pursuant to,
You're way off.
so
I'm talking about the well. No, them 3 wells were not mentioned in Jim Tech's report. Why wasn't they mentioned?
So I think Gemtech is here, they can answer, they produce the report, so.
You can interrupt. I'm Paul Van I work at Gemtech. I'm a senior environmental engineer. I also work for the Department of Environment, local government, very audit process in the administrator. The reason why the wells aren't identified that are located on private property, because when the documentation was prepared to submit the rezoning application, we consulted the online well law database that is maintained by the Department of Environment and local government. We did a search, basically a search around the perimeter, if you will, of the lands to be zoned, up to 200 meters. None of the wells that were allegedly located on the private property are included in that database. I don't know what the rationale, the reason for that is. I can tell you from experience, having worked for the Department of Environment and local government for many years. When a well is drilled, well driller will attach a well ID and report to the Department of Environment and local government that that well was drilled, and then they subsequently enter that data set into the database, thereby capturing all the wells that are drilled in the process. That system was introduced in 1994 or thereabouts. I believe you started operating either shortly after that or around that time.
In 1992.
1992.
In that location.
So that is what we checked. That is the new due diligence that we go through to make sure that the wells are captured. Again, I checked.
But you didn't go on Triangle's property and
I did not.
Look for those 3 wells.
Correct. I did not go on your property.
So are them wells not, my employees that drink out of those water wells, they're not included with the rest of the population? Like they can drink water in, out of them wells, and it doesn't make any difference where somebody else, down the road, they gotta stay back 600 meters. Why is what's the difference between they're drinking water wells? My employees drink them.
Understood.
So
And the rationale, as I explained, when we prepared.
that is just a loophole.
Charlie,
Understood.
I think what he's saying is where he got his information, it wasn't included.
Yes, but they're there.
Understood.
So
As I said, when we prepared the application and the supporting information, we checked the online well database, which is the standard protocol. We did not go on other people's property, that is correct. So that is why they were.
So what's, now that you know they're there, what's the status going forward?
Are these wells, do they have well tags on them? Do they have well IDs associated with them? You know? And they are all used for potable purposes? or are they industrial? The standard is specific to.
They go to my scale houses, my office, and one well was used for water to spray on conveyors. That's
So if the wells are in fact used for potable purposes, then that would have to be taken into consideration. Now, there is a process to ask permission from the well owner for a variance on that setback. So that's a process that would be followed.
so. In your report, it mentions nothing about blasting and the fly rock going over and hitting one of my employees and killing them. Why was that not mentioned in the report?
This is a rezoning application. We look at lands to be rezoned. The report concluded that a quarry operation can be facilitated within the confines of the property. That is acknowledged, and we agree that there are setbacks associated with various land uses that will have to be implemented. For example, the setback from a property boundary is 30 meters. So it is acknowledged that 30-meter buffer will be maintained around the property that will encroach on the land, thereby limiting the extent to which the quarry would be developed. Likewise, any other setbacks or other features as per this standard would be employed to ensure that the quarry would be in accordance with all these setback requirements, and the lands provide enough land mass and land base to facilitate that given the setback requirements. That's what the report said, and stand by it.
When it comes to fly rock from a blast, 100 feet means nothing. Means absolutely nothing.
That may be so, but that's.
I know it. I've been doing the
I'm
quarry
not disagreeing with you.
for
I'm saying that is what the regulatory planners suggest.
Are you telling me that I don't know?
No, I'm not telling you that.
I've been doing it. I've lived it for 36 years. I know about fly rock and what it can do.
But all I can say
But you
is,
never even mentioned it in your report.
well, those are aspects that would be associated with the approved operate, which is a subsequent step to the zoning application.
But you're giving them information that's not true, and information that you don't know anything about.
Well, I appreciate that, but
Yeah, but I mean, you're sending a message to these people,
I believe the information.
that's not true. A lot of the information in your report is not true.
I believe the information that is presented in our report is in fact factual and is accurate.
It is done in such a way that works for you, not for Brian. Yeah, not reality. Yeah,
Well, it is in accordance with the requirements as outlined by the standards in the state of the government.
if you just did the well thing, it's 600 feet back, that knocks the whole thing right out.
I don't think it belongs to the whole thing. I don't think it has an implication, but
Yeah.
So,
And you didn't even mention it in the report.
because like I said,
Yeah.
the online well data based on the consultant does not include your wells.
okay, so can I just interrupt for a second? We're just gonna get a little bit of clarity on council's role.
So council's role is ultimately determined if the rezoning or the zoning should be changed. The duty as to how to operate, that is not under council's authority, that is under the provincial jurisdiction. Pursuant to your comments, you are correct. Once or if the council decides to rezone said property, the proponent would have to receive approval from the provincial government to operate with any potential regulations in place, rules, requirements pertaining to that specific application. But council's role especially tonight is to see if they will approve the zoning modification to permit that going towards that next step. Let me, Phil,
What I'm getting,
excuse me, Phil, do you have anything to add? No, that's good.
what I'm getting at is he sends in a report. That a lot of it is not true, it's not accurate. And you guys are getting that information and making the decision based on that information, and that's wrong.
So I think obviously there's a gap there with the wells that would need to be addressed before. As far as, I mean, I would say myself, I have a few questions, but they are around regulation, like the comments about the buffers for the ANFO. And I guess you've already addressed the fall rock, which I understand that that's a standard that's may not, they may not feel it's sufficient, but that is a standard that's in place, so we would kind of have to, okay.
I just add another thing. Yeah. Also, as per the act, council has 6 months to treat the application from the date that the notice was submitted. After that date, if council do not proceed, and if it ultimately dies on the order paper, cannot proceed further. So council do not need to move forward with it, but should they act, not act within that 6 month timeframe, it would ultimately end without a council decision.
If they blast and destroy my actual plant, destroy my crushing operation and the equipment surrounding me, who's gonna pay me for the damages? I mean, am I gonna be,
So
they're too close to my operation to be, blasted.
I think we receive a lot of new information just on Wednesday, Thursday. My recommendation would be allow us to digest this information and let the applicant kind of reply on how these concerns will be mitigated before council is making any decision. So I think a lot of questions, especially on that federal regulation, I'm not sure we're going to have answers tonight. But I'm of the opinion that absolutely, yes, we should have answers before making a decision on this report.
So I think it's not just the applicant that needs to respond, obviously the well issue needs to be addressed because that's not.
Yeah.
That's not.
How are you going to change it? The wells are the wells and they are where they are. The blasting
Charlie,
problem is, it is what it is. And it's going to happen.
Charlie, we're not suggesting you'd have to move the wells. We're saying that the recommendation they gave is obviously not accurate anymore because they were unaware of your wells. So they're gonna have to come back with us with an answer before we could ever proceed because they weren't aware, so they didn't include it.
But there's more issues than just.
Well, and that's what Phil just said, is that they should,
It goes on and on.
that's what Phil's saying, is that he thinks that the best solution would be for them to take the information you guys have provided and review it and come back with potential responses or, you know, adjustments based on what's in here, whether they can just dispute it or they can say that it is, you are correct and they missed it, whichever way that falls. But I think we're kind of at a standstill.
There's no stand from, well, that's just the loophole trying to get around.
But
The issue, the wells are there. You can all go and look at them. They're all there.
we're not,
Within 6 feet or 30 meters, 100 feet.
we're not disputing the wells are there, Charlie. He just didn't find them when he looked for them. So that's why we're saying we're at a standstill because we don't.
But this is something that's very, very important to try to,
Yes.
and our future operations. And there's a lot of things that are being overlooked. And it's not fair, it's not right.
So I think right now, then our best course of action would be to allow this report to go back and be digested, the adjustments to be made for the wells and the other items to be addressed, and then we can review it again. So help me with the timeline. because-
So part of me feels, is there, wasn't there a requiring the act, and I know there's some modifications that provides the proponent a period of time that he has to answer to any concerns raised at this meeting.
Yes, it's 2 weeks.
14 days.
Yeah, well, that's in the act, so you can't do like the third reading immediately after. Yeah, they can take more time than that to respond. That's not the purpose of that section you're making.
So council cannot proceed or could not proceed with first and second reading tonight. Have another meeting tomorrow night to do a third reading. They would have to wait a 14-day period. So if council decides to not proceed with any readings tonight, or proceed or provide any readings tonight, next scheduled meeting is only scheduled at next in April, which is a month away.
Yeah.
That would provide sufficient time as per the act for Genentech to be able to.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, you could technically do readings tonight without finalizing anything that is today.
Just given the nature of the discussion, I think it's probably prudent to hold off on a reading myself.
I echo those sentiments. I mean, there's no reason to have a working second reading when, we're basing it on a recommendation that,
I agree with other councilors that the commission has come forth. This needs to be addressed. Obviously, very soon, with all the regulations in place before we can move forward.
Okay, so.
so when we meet again to discuss this, do you want to read as?
No,
This
is the public hearing.
So I have just one question, it's general to you as a new council. If you make a decision, okay, and whatever it may be, pros or cons, whatever your decision is, are you going to follow that through for the residents when you make a decision based on the information that you have, and you make a recommendation, whatever it may be, and it comes out back to us and says, this is how it's going to be. Do you guarantee, are you going to be able to guarantee that to the residents, or whatever happens down the road happens? I'm sorry, but it's sort of on the same line. I have this letter here from Trade. I sat through all this same thing in 2007 with the Gorge Road 815, and we were guaranteed what was going to happen at the Gorge Road, and it was let go ahead based on decisions that we were guaranteed. I have this letter, which all other residents got, that sat through these same meetings, guaranteeing us that 815 Gorge Road would never have any aggregate ever again piled on his property or processed on his property. There would be no construction materials on his property. There would be 2 rows of white pine planted all along the Gorge Road with the fence moved back. This is all here, which is from Train, which was their engineers at the time. But my point is, all this, and now you drive in the Gorge Road today, you've got probably the largest piles of acreage you could see anywhere visibly. Certainly you don't see it from the Gorge Road going up through the pit, but drive in the Gorge Road, and it's along with construction material. There was nothing to be going on happen there except the repair of vehicles. That's what's guaranteed in here, that the building could be repaired for vehicles and manhole covers for construction jobs they'd be doing. All I'm saying, and the question is basically, what are we doing here if nobody backs us on the decision? Do you people make a decision that will be followed for the residents, not for some company or whatever?
So,
but
I think, obviously I can't speak to decisions that were made in the past because we were not a government. Can I tell someone that they can't apply for rezoning because someone else made a decision years ago? No, I can't.
No, that's not my point. My point is, whatever decision you make, are you going to make sure that's followed through for the sake of the residents, okay? It's obviously the city of Moncton didn't, because this is from them, okay?
So the best I can promise you, Garnie, is that I can follow it through till 2026, but then it depends on if you reelect me. It's really the best answer I can give you. I can't promise you the next mayor will do the exact same thing that I promised to do. I'm not, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I just, I won't make you a promise that I can only keep for a guarantee of 2 more years and then who knows?
Yeah, no, but that would be as far as your personal response, but my question is, as far as a council, it doesn't matter who's council is, if we're gonna have a council, are they going to be there to back the people on a decision that was made by a previous council?
Again, it will depend on the council and the decision. If we did choose to rezone this and they were upset about it when the next council come in, could they, yeah, that's a bad example, but if this council makes a decision that you're unhappy with, you wouldn't want to be in a position where if you approach the next council, they'd say, no, I'm not, because the last council made that decision. So it's really, I mean, we're going to do the best we can for the residents, but none of us at this table can make a promise to you that the next council would do the exact same thing or with, you know, hold up everything that we have done.
So will you pass a bylaw for a individual, a company or whatever, that law will not stay intact? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying it won't. I'm saying I can't promise you that sometime down the road it wouldn't get changed. That's just not it's, I don't think any government official could promise you that. I would like to think that the foundation that we're building, the majority of those items wouldn't be something that another council would see fit to overturn. But I can't promise you that one item might not get overturned. It's a.
I think Ernie's saying the opposite.
Yeah.
Something was promised to the residents.
Yeah.
And never took place.
Yeah.
So it's gonna guarantee that anything that's promised that any company will do, and they don't do it. That's what Ernie's saying. It did
No,
not.
I understand that was outlined in this document, but again, if an item gets brought to council and you didn't have a council before and we feel that a different decision is what's best for the residents, again, we can't promise that we wouldn't overturn it. What if something had been done?
Mayor Warren. No, I'm asking over wants to do something for a company and they're not in compliance.
Yeah, that's what they're asking.
He's asking for compliance.
They're not in compliance. There's nothing that's promised to me, but at that time, ever happened.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I guess that would be for the.
If they're not compliant.
My
Based on
apologies.
who they're not compliant with. If they're not compliant with Plan 360, Plan 360 would be, I want to say ordered, I think that's it, would be, responsible to have the proponent comply. Should it be different, Department of Environment, Department of Federal Regulations, those, appropriate, entities would be responsible to enforce any regulation or any infractions that, would be made.
My apologies, Garnet. I thought you were asking about the.
No, it's compliant.
I'm sorry.
Yes, the council do have, as per the act, they can implement, they can modify, or they can repeal any bylaw that is under their.
Councilor Murray.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment, and I know Mayor Warren, yeah, I kind of misunderstood there, but so if anything gets brought to our attention, and we've had it as even in the last year, as we've done this and learned, we have been approached by people that live in Maple Hills. Hey, this area is not doing the right thing, this, whatever it may be, they're not, going by what the bylaws are, what the zoning is and stuff like that. So as long as that gets brought to our attention, we can then get a hold of the, appropriate people, whether it's Phil here or somebody else, and we can kind of go about it and, that have those people, actually listen and actually do what they're supposed to with their zoning, like I said. So if it get brought to our attention, we can get a hold of the appropriate, people. If nobody ever tells us, this is the big thing with council, the more you guys tell us, we can go and make sure everyone's in compliance to the way things should be. But if we don't know, we're not going to every single business. We don't know what's compliance, what part of their deal is and everything else like that. But if we can look into it, in the last year, council's done it multiple times where we've gone after and made sure people were in the right zoning and stuff, so.
Okay, so we sort of veered away from
Yep.
the task at hand. Is it related to the,
Only that, that's why I asked who leases any conditions.
Okay. okay, so do,
Phil answered that question.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, we administer the conditions that are in the rezoning. So a lot of the things we discussed, setbacks and stuff like that, would be through the Department of Environment. So our role would just to be to make sure that the permit from them will be received before we allow some operation. So there's certain things that we cannot do. We're not gonna make sure that the water is being sprayed on the rock.
Condition that could be imposed.
Yeah.
By council might be that they need to require, the operating permit to operate even. Or it goes without saying, government, they're gonna require it. But it could be set forth as.
Yeah, and we can have that discussion, what are reasonable conditions set for rezoning. Yeah.
Okay.
so are there any additional concerns we haven't heard yet? Okay.
Well, my biggest concern.
Oh, wait, can you tell us your name? I'm
David-
sorry, I have not.
David Lipscomb. My biggest concern is, when they're changing conservation zone for crushing now. I mean, it takes a lot to change a conservation zone, doesn't it? But it just seems kind of, okay, if we, water agreed to be conservation zone, how many years ago? Oh, now 10 years, let's try to get it rezoned there. So we can expand our quarry. I'm concerned with that because my property, or it's not my property, it's Charlie's property, is another conservation zone, I believe, which, what's to say in another 15 years, they're gonna be farther up there and say, we need more rock. Please change this from conservation to quarry so that we can continue our business another 30 years. That's my concern. It seems so easy that 20 years ago, it was kind of assured that this is gonna be conservation. Now is it that easy to change from conservation? Something this important. Where's all the conservation people? Is there one person here? Is there one person here? No, because it's part of the conservation group of people. Is there one person? Not one.
What are they conserving?
What?
What are they conserving? Rocks.
Piece of property that's
Conserving what rocks, not my trees, what are they conserving?
that piece of property.
What's it?
There's water.
You,
I would just not stop people back.
Okay, guys, we can't have a debate within the public, guys, we can't. Sorry.
no, it don't sit well with me that there's no one here from the conservation organization who will. That is not,
Okay, so I think at this point, our next steps would be to, oh, I'm sorry. Somebody over here have a.
Might be not much, actually, just clarification, we will be looking at the report back to answer the questions. The other point was the gentleman down there, I understand his concern, but 815 Gorge Road is within the city limits.
And
It doesn't belong to this Maple Hills group and all that, that's a city limit and the problem.
And I realize that, sir, that's why I said it was a city.
Yeah, just 73, it's not.
I was only making a reference so we'd understand why we're concerned when you make a decision, what backing we have. It has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
It's just, where do you as a council stand in making a decision that represents us as the local residents of whatever area we live in Maple Hill?
and that's why I'm saying if this was original 20 years ago or whatever, deemed conservation area, is it that easy to change it to conservation area?
Okay,
Just wait 20 years and another council will come in and
okay,
pull a slide.
okay, so I think we have heard everything. We're not gonna hear anything new, I don't think, at this point, and I think we need for you to have the, oh.
So in regards to the pit themselves, obviously you have substantial metal in it. I have to ask the question, why specifically this zone? Why specifically that area? Or is the materials you're specifically looking for not on the rest of your land, or is the lifespan of your land plan to use the whole thing?
Not all of them. There is a concern, as we all know, we're all talking about climate change. And one of the biggest things that we're looking for, or the municipality's environment is looking for, is iron stone, riprap, and like large sized rocks that are required, that we're using constantly down for the Kodiak River. We've done several projects there, Tri-Hill has done some there, well supplying rock for that because of the road that has happened. As well as all the stuff that's happening along the coastline, they are all looking for materials. We find in our quarry, that face along there seems to make that product the best.
So it's specifically that area for this one product.
It just seems to be in the quarry. I mean, we do get some from the rest of the quarry, but we do seem to have better production getting the large size rocks. We are starting to talk about 2 ton, 4 ton, 6 ton rock is being required in these jobs because of the massive storms that we've been having, you know, 1 in 100-year storms that we're having every 18 months to 2 years. And it just, for whatever reason, the geology in that area seems to produce that product.
But they made the deal. They made the deal to get the other land zoned by putting that piece of land into conservation.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
They made the deal.
Yep, we're aware.
You know what I mean? They made the deal. You know what I mean?
Okay,
They're the ones that put the land into conservation,
yeah, okay,
so they could get together then.
okay.
I
No,
mean,
we're,
they're saying that, I mean, there's rock there. They should have thought about that when they made the deal.
okay,
The deal is done now.
okay, oh, okay. So I think next steps will be to get this information and come back at the next meeting with the responses, I guess is the best way to put it. For us to, I think we can have do we have a motion to table? Is that a-
Well, I think if the consensus of council is to push to a future meeting, that will suffice.
Okay,
Because at the end of the day, I don't think there will be any proposed motions that I have prepared, so.
so it would now take a motion to table, or I need to get this open and Wednesday. It would now take a motion to table the first reading of bylaw 24-WAP-WAP-069-MA-0MH-01.
Easy tea.
So we're all good?
Perfect.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry it took that long.
We're sorry, it's the other one.
It's okay.
That works.
Oh, fair enough.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Ellie.
Thank you.
So our next item is 11C.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you very much.
Anna, our
Yes.
next item is 11C.
No, it's not really.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is appointment of officers.
So, today is the 6th-month mark of Anna's employment with the municipality. I have awarded her permanent status as of today. But my recommendation at the last committee of the whole would be to appoint her as treasurer of the municipality, thus relinquishing powers from my responsibilities. I would, however, recommend redoing the motion to appoint me as deputy treasurer, which would effectively, there would be any absences for myself, I could act on behalf of the municipality, and vice versa for Anna. She has already been appointed deputy clerk, but it's always simpler to sometimes do a motion and just nullify everything that's previous. So you have a proposed motion should council decide to appoint Anna as treasurer. But I would recommend that. Any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Question.
So go ahead.
Question.
I know first I was gonna say. Oh, good.
I would now take a moment to adopt the motion in question with regard to appointing the treasurer and CEO here, assistant treasurer.
I'll move. Whereas section 71(1) of the Local Governments Act states the council of every local government shall appoint a clerk, treasurer, and auditor. Whereas section 74(2) of the Local Governance Act states the assistant clerk has all the powers and duties of the clerk in his or her absence or disability. Whereas section 76(2) of the Local Governance Act states the assistant treasurer has all powers and duties of the clerk in his or her absence or disability. Be it resolved that Eve Legier be appointed CAO, clerk, and assistant treasurer for the Maple Hills Rural Community. Be it also resolved that Hannah Downey be appointed treasurer and assistant clerk for the Maple Hills Rural Community. And be it resolved that all other appointments as for positions of CAO, clerk, and treasurer, or their assistant proceeding therein be determined.
Any questions? Do I have a second? Are we ready for the question? We'll now proceed with the vote. All those in favor of the appointments read by Councillor Esty, show your consent by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carried.
Very good day, man. See you later. Mr. Chair.
Let's clap.
I never get that kind of.
Yeah.
No.
So, the last topic on the agenda is a grant application received from the U15 minor hockey team. They will be hosting the provincial championships at the K Arena this upcoming weekend. They have, or there are 5 to 6 players on the team that will be participating in those championships. There is also a coach and a few grandparents that live within the Maple Hills boundaries. Maple Hills is a catchment area for minor hockey players. The application asked for a $500 maximum amount. We heard that the city of Moncton proceeded with a $375 grant. Hearing that, obviously our recommendation, should council decide to proceed with the grant, would be for $250, which is half the amount, but also less than Moncton, which had 1 players participating in the championship. So should council decide to proceed with the grant, we would simply need a motion to.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Second. Be it resolved that the council award a grant of $250 to U15B Provincial Hockey Championship hosted by the Louisville Lightning U15 competitive team.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of approving grant for $250 to the U15 Hockey Championship, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed?
Good job, Pat.
Oh,
I'm sorry, this is the.
are we going to pull that?
So it's very accountable.
Just as it feels. Give another stuff.
No one ever gets that excited to see me.
How about your dog?
Oh my God, just give that. Right,
We've done, we are done in the topics on the agenda.
okay, any unfinished business?
None for this one, but there will be some. Yeah.
It would now take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Meeting adjourned.
Done.
Good, that.
We don't need to,
The provincial. Yeah.